He's an actor, a writer, a producer, and oh yeah, he used to be WWE's Director of Security. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jimmy Noonan.
Or Jenny. Jimmy Noonan works.
That's what we call a little bit of a tongue twister in the business. So, Jimmy, how are you doing? Thanks for taking the time for being with us.
Well, I'm a little. You guys got heat with me right off the bat because you're into my Shark Tank time. Shark Tank is on right now. We're at the 8:30 mark. Damon's about to make an offer on a cup, and Cuban's going to come over the top of them. I think Laurie's actually going to do the job and put them both over, but I'm not sure right now. So if we could move this along, I'd appreciate it because Shark Tank time.
You got it. Now, speaking of TV, obviously, imagine my surprise a few weeks back. Turned on the television, and I see you on Fox's hit show, Gotham. Now, how did this happen, and what was the experience like on this show?
The experience was wonderful. The problem was that a lot of my stuff ended up on the editing floor. There was 2 previous scenes before the one where I escort Jada Pinkett Smith out. It was nice because people who know me and wrestling fans got to see me, and a lot of people commented on. Even a couple of wrestlers, John Hugger, Stamboli, made a comment, and a couple of other guys made comments. Hey, it was good to see you on TV. But for the most part, all my stuff ended up on the editing room floor. And hey, listen, that's part of the business. I was also on a show called Allegiance the week before that. I was pretty hot in last December in the biz, so I did 2 shows back to back. And guess what? Allegiance just got canceled. So my comeback into the TV business after doing L.A. Law years ago and then New York Undercover and Sex and the City and the Cosby Mysteries hasn't been that wonderful. But, we're going to keep on chugging. Life is good.
All right, Jimmy, now is there anything you're currently working on maybe or, something else that we could probably see you on down the line on TV?
Well, there's 2 things that are very close to me. First of all, I'm somewhat of an advisor right now. I'm in an advisor capacity to 2 gentlemen from Tennessee who wrote a wonderful and actually made. The movie's made. It's in the can. It's ready to go. It's called The Mast Saints. And it is a wrestling movie, believe it or not. And if I was to put it in one line, I would say he's a preacher by day and a professional wrestler by night. And that's the movie. That's the theme of the movie. It is a faith-based movie, and they are very excited about it. They put a lot of movie. I will tell you one thing about the movie. I am one of the few people on the planet Earth who've seen the screener. I've watched the whole movie. The wrestling is across the board the best wrestling I've ever seen in a movie. Across the board, the good versus evil, the 2 main characters, and then a bunch of guys in between. But the 2 main characters, the priest and then the bad guy, the heel, the best wrestling I have ever seen in a movie. The other thing, and that's called The Mast Saint, and that will be out sometime this year. The other thing, and more importantly, is the Martha's Vineyard affair. 25 years ago, I went to Martha's Vineyard with my sister Peggy, and Peggy was very hot at the time. She was coming off 2 best-selling books. She was coming off time with Reagan in the Reagan White House, and we went up there for vacation. And I met a guy who had a book. He was kind of showing off the book for my sister Peggy one day, and he brought it by, and I instantly knew in 1990 that this was going to be a big part of my life. The problem was that I wrote the screenplay before I owned the rights. No knucklehead does that. First, people buy the rights, and then they write the screenplay. Well, I wrote the screenplay 25 years ago, and then we never worked it out. Anyway, it's years later. I approached the gentleman again. I got the rights to the book, to the producer and the screenwriter on the Martha's Vineyard affair. And now I'm in this quandary, what to do with the main male role. I originally wrote it for Jimmy Noonan. That's why That's why I got involved. The guy was in his 40s. He was big. He was heavily muscular. He's a real actor. And now I'm too old to play the role. So what do? Who do I offer it to? Well, I kind of quasi-offered it to a former WWE World Champion who shall not be named right now. And he basically passed on it. There were too many questions, and right now he's too busy. So I've been thinking, I'm not, listen, I was in the business for a while. I have a few ideas. I'm not a big John Cena fan, but Cena would actually be perfect for the role. But you know who would actually be better for the role? I see Triple H as the lead in my movie. Now, this is normally a role that would go to like a Kevin Costner type or a younger Kevin Costner or Channing Tatum. But I actually see a guy like Triple H in my movie, and if Triple H ever wants to talk about doing the lead in my movie and giving me $3 or $4 million to get it done, I think we would have a major hit on my hand, and I think I would get WWE Films their first Academy Award nomination. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, that sounds great to us. Now, you had a Kickstarter project for this movie, and it is starting to pick up a lot of buzz. So where do you go from here now that you've got some ideas of maybe who you'd like to cast? Where are we at this juncture?
Well, we're nowhere right now. I'm going to be honest with you. I had the Kickstarter up, and you talk to all your friends and you talk to all your people. Oh yeah, you'll get it. And then all of a sudden, nobody's got any money. And all of a sudden, nobody's interested. And all of a sudden, I'll see you next week. So I dropped the Kickstarter project. I got $350 in a week. That means in 10 years, I could make my movie. Dudes, I'm not going to beg anybody for money. You want to be involved in something wonderful. Why wouldn't you trust my track record? Why wouldn't you trust the fact that I'm probably the only guy in the history of WWE ever to have been on Broadway. I'm fucking Broadway, okay?
Yep.
Movies, TV. I've been all over the world 100 times. I've done some incredible stuff. Why wouldn't you put your money behind me? But I'm not going to beg you. The movie's going to get made anyway, so I'm not worried. But I would, if there is some kind of synergy, like maybe, just maybe, I could look at it this way. Maybe I was at WWE almost 8 years for somebody to see this and say, man, that looks like a terrific project. I'd really like to read for that character. Maybe that's really the reason instead of all the other crappy reasons I was there. So anyway, the real answer is the project is nowhere right now. Jared Bunch, the former New York Giant fullback, who had a great year with the Giants in the 90s, he read it recently. He's a kind of a guy who knows a lot of people in California. He really liked it. He really enjoyed the female character, the female lead. I want to get Demi Moore for her comeback for a female lead, but, this is very difficult. I'm not a Hollywood guy. I took myself out of the Hollywood realm to go to WWE, and I screwed myself terribly. And now I'm not in that milieu even all these years later because I thought I was going to be in the security business. And I kind of, I don't need Hollywood anymore. Now here I am back in Hollywood, So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is sometimes, but it sure is an interesting journey. I'll be honest with you about that.
All right. Well, speak a little bit more about Hollywood. I'm sure you get this asked a lot, but maybe the cult classic which you starred in, Super Troopers, a lot, which is actually filmed in our home area over here. There's been talk about a second movie. Any chance we're going to see you reprise the role?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Oh, that is. I like to hear that.
There you go.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Either way, I can't wait for the second.
Non-disclosures and confidentiality, baby. Isn't it a beautiful thing?
It is. That's highly. I'm just going to say that that's exciting for me, whether it's what I want it to be or not. But when you go about doing these things, whenever you see something like Gotham pop up, or the movie you talked about, the Mast Saint, or even the Martha's Vineyard affair. How do you go about picking a role? Because as you said, you were an accomplished actor. You are an accomplished actor. You were on Broadway. You get to be a little more choosy now, don't you?
You would think. You would think at 57 years old, being a guy who's been in the business for 30 years, I would. But again, so I'm going to flat out do something tonight and say something I've never said before. In 1999, 2000, I sat down with Peggy, my sister, and she said, what are you going to do? So what's this thing I hear about these guys wrestling? I said, well, I'm going out on the road with WWE. I've been offered a great job. She said, why would you do that? You just came off a Broadway show. You're about to do another. You did 3 TVs, Super Troopers, a movie with Jill Clayburgh, had a beautiful scene with Jill Clayburgh. You got all this stuff going on. Why would you take yourself out of that when you're about to hit? And I made the worst decision of my life. I made what I am clarifying right now as the biggest mistake of my life by choosing to go out on the road with WWE. The biggest mistake of my life. I can say this with full clarity 7 years later, looking back. And the reason I say that is because you would think by now I would be the type of guy who could choose my roles. But guess what? I set myself so far back, and I pulled myself behind the 8 ball, behind the cue ball, the 8 ball, whatever it's called. I set myself so far back that now I'm just a guy who will take the dregs. I will take anything to get a SAG check to make SAG money so that I get SAG insurance at the end of the year. I totally screwed myself by going out on the road with WWE to spend time with wrestlers and to see the world. I was going to see the world anyway. Guess what? So there's 2 answers in one for you.
All right, well, speaking of the WWE, for people who may not know you, you were the Director of Security for many years. With that being said, I think you're more than qualified to answer these next few questions than anyone. Well, today, the news broke that Larry Zbyszko would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. What are your thoughts on the WWE Hall of Fame in this year's class?
I have no problem with Mr. Zbyszko. I don't know him. I do know when I first started watching wrestling in the early '80s, he was a prominent heel. I think he paid his dues. I think he worked the territories. I think he got where he got the hard way, and I think for that he deserves it. Rikishi in the Hall of Fame, is that one of the guys who's getting in this year?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Rikishi is in the Hall of Fame, a guy who barely got on the show every Monday and Tuesday night, you got to realize when Rikishi was there, never mind, let's say just while I was there, okay? While I was there, you had Steve and Rock, and you had Hulk, and then you had NWO come back. Then you had the Hardys, and then you had Edge, and you had all the luchadors, or what do you call it, the middleweights, or what were they called at the time?
Cruiserweights.
Right?
Yep.
Then you got Angle and Taker and Batista coming up with Cena and Orton and Shelton Benjamin and Edge and Chris Jericho and Brock and Billy Goldberg coming in. So you don't even have, and never mind Eddie and Benoit. Come on, you don't even have a spot for Rikishi on the show that night. Get it?
Yeah.
You don't even have a spot for Rikishi on the show. Yet Rikishi's going into the Hall of Fame? Are you kidding me? For what? A gimmick?
Yeah.
Or some kind of weird familial history? Now, I'm going to get some heat for this. Rocky's going to hate me forever. Reigns will hate me forever. The whole Hawaiian, Eki. I think Eki had more potential to be a Hall of Famer than Rikishi. What was Eki's gimmick? Eki's gimmick. 3-minute warning, and what was the other thing?
Yep,
When he died? Umaga. I mean, I think he was a better wrestler. I mean, you're in there for a gimmick. I get it, but come on, what? Chuck and Billy are next? Are Chuck and Billy next for the Hall of Fame? Are the Heartthrobs next for the Hall of Fame? This is just getting ridiculous. I'm sorry, I don't get it. The celebrity thing I get because WWE at the end of the day has to sell tickets, and they have to put the Drew Carries and the Mike Tysons because there's a crossover appeal. But true Hall of Fame work, Are you guys telling me that Rikishi? Let me ask you a question. Does Rikishi belong in the Hall of Fame?
I do not think so.
Nope.
Steve, you?
Nope, not at all.
Of course. That's the answer. Will Rey Mysterio be a Hall of Famer someday? Absolutely. Rey Mysterio revolutionized what the smaller guys did. That's a call in 5, 6, 7 years, maybe sooner than that. I mean, maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But Rikishi, sorry guys, wrong answer.
Well, now I guess we're gonna get into some controversy here. I didn't know if this was gonna happen or not, but I have to ask you about it. 2014 and 15 has been filled with controversy in the world of wrestling. CM Punk made an abrupt departure, and now we're getting this investigation and resignation of head trainer Bill Demott. It feels like the world of wrestling has been more exposed than ever. Do you have any thoughts about the Bill Demott situation?
I met Bill Demott in 2000. I met him at the restaurant, WWF New York, and Bill Demott was one of the first guys to greet me on the road in Texas. One of my first 4 shows were in Texas in the late 99, early 2000, somewhere around there. I can't remember because I spent a lot of time at WWF New York before going on the road. So we got to know the talent that way. Bill Demott was always a gentleman. He was very likable. He went out of his way. Now, I don't know if it was his girlfriend or his wife, and I'm not being funny. I just can't remember if he was married at the time or a girlfriend, but he had a beautiful woman with him who was obviously his significant other. And he introduced me to her in Texas. He was a gentleman. He was one of the nicest guys. Then we did a show in Yuma, Arizona, about a week or 2 later, and we had a lot of fun. I never had any beef with Bill. Do I believe all the things that he's been accused of? I absolutely do. But I say that with, I think it would have been anybody who was in his spot. I don't necessarily think it's Bill being an ugly man or a bad guy, but I would say in general there is a culture of bullying in WWE in general. WWE is a real bullying type of place. Some guys that you wouldn't expect. Listen, I'm never going to ever say anything bad about Vince McMahon. Mm-hmm. Vince McMahon, I got to see the world on Vince McMahon's dime. I got to eat a lot of steak on Vince McMahon's dime. I got to live in a big house on Vince McMahon's dime. I'm not going to say anything bad to him. I will say that one night in the back of a limo, for some weird reason, coming back from Safeco Field the night before WrestleMania, I don't know, WrestleMania 18, what it was, coming 19. Back from Safeco Field, that he almost tried to intimidate me, and he was just sort of staring at me with this weird thing while he ate a protein bar because he went over his match with Hogan that night, and I knew it was going to be an epic match, but it was just this weird moment we had, and I knew what Vince was trying to do. I am a man. I'm a fighter. I've been a fighter all my life. Okay? I was getting in bar brawls when I was 15 years old. I know when another man is trying to intimidate me, and Vince, for some reason, in that weird moment, I felt like tried to intimidate me. There's a bigger picture here. The WWE is full of bullies. JBL, as much as I love him, is a bully. Booker T is one of the biggest bullies in WWE history. Then you got the guys, the obvious ones. You got Bob. What he did to Capitelli that day, Bully Bob, or what the hell's his name? Bully Bob.
Hardcore Holly.
Hardcore Holly. What he did to Capitelli that day on Tough Enough, Matt Capitelli, was despicable. It was despicable. It was embarrassing to be a man to watch that day. Picking on a young kid who's nervous and on TV, and just because you can physically intimidate him and mentally mess with him, you do that. And that's the bigger picture. I got bullied out of WWE by a guy in the office, a guy who was supposedly my boss. I was on the road with WWE. Johnny Laurinaitis and Vince and Steph and Hunter were my bosses. I had no beef with them. I had no problems with them. But because of this guy in the office and because of people like Booker, I got bullied out of the job. Booker knew I was Dave Batista's guy, and Booker didn't like me. Booker also didn't understand that I was a single guy on the road, enjoying the fruits of my singleness on the road. And there was this air that, I was doing all these things wrong, and I was giving people information about our hotels and all this crap. Somebody threw an egg, a German in the 400 section. They're using the Nigger chant. That's how Germans treat blacks. No. In Frankfurt, wherever we were in Frankfurt, we were summoning German, and they're going they're using the N word, and then somebody throws an egg out in the 400 section at about 100 miles an hour, comes flying back her head, and Booker cut a promo on his security guy. Booker cut a promo on his security guy who'd been there for 8-9 years, me, in front of thousands of Germans, and then did it again backstage in front of the boys, and then did it again at the hotel later. Why would you do that to your security guy? There's no reason for it, but because I was Dave's guy, and because I was, there was some type of idea that I wasn't doing my job, and Charmel almost got hit by an egg in Germany where they hated Booker and the whole King Booker gimmick. Now I'm a bad guy. It's a bullying type of culture. Mm-hmm. Is Triple H a bully? No. Was Dave a bully? No. Was Eddie a bully? No. I don't even think Big Show's a bully, and I don't think in his heart, Vince is a different kind of character. Cena in his own way, with all his power, is a little bit of a bully. I was never a Cena guy, and Cena was a bit of a bully, Sure. So I think the bigger picture is whether it was Bill Demott or somebody else, it was going to happen. That's the culture of WWE. It's bullying.
Mm. Now, did you happen to catch Colt Cabana's podcast with CM Punk?
Best podcast interview I have ever heard across the board. I listened just because, Punk is Punk, and I wanted to hear what he would say. And it was across the board. It was historic.
No, it was historic. It was that big. It was that good.
Do you think Punk was justified in his complaints?
Oh, I don't. I think Punk was spot on 100%. Mm-hmm. I mean, about everything. Now, do I know that? Do I know that the big guy was actually a little stiff with him? Well, I wasn't there for it. Would I imagine it? Absolutely. Do I know about the cyst on the back? No. Did I see pictures? No. Do I doubt it? No, I don't doubt it. I used to watch Little Dr. Rios, probably the best doctor WWE ever had. Dr. Rios, Dr. Louis Rios, the best. And I used to watch him clean the pus out of Hardcore Holly's elbow 2-3 times a week because he had a staph infection on his elbow. But Hardcore Holly, he wasn't going to take any time off. I mean, it's a brutal business, guys. I mean, people don't even get how brutal the business is. I could tell you stories how every guy that I was with for 8 years, 9 years suffered. I could tell you a story. And I could tell you a lot of other stories, too. I always warn, if there's ever going to be any reprisals from WWE about some of the things I say, I just like to remember them. I know a lot of shit. No, it's not a threat in any way. But if there's ever any reprisals to me, I know everything about everybody, and I think they forget that I was on the road all those years with those guys while those shitheads were sitting in the office. And I mean shitheads like the guy who dumped me, some guy named Rich Herring, and who eventually dumped Jimmy Killis and who eventually dumped Gary Perna and the rest of the security guys, too. He's a bad guy, and he's a bully.
Now, there's a current campaign called #GiveDivas a Chance. This is a reaction to the fans chanting boring during most of the Divas matches. You were there for a different time. You had some really top talent. This is when Lita and Trish were main eventing Raw. What do you think about the current crop of divas in the WWE?
Well, I think that girl with the long red hair, the fire engine red hair.
Yeah, Eva Marie.
What's her name? She is magnificent.
Yes.
Oh my God, I would chop off my right leg to spend the night with her. What do I think? I think it's a different time. I think it's a different time. I mean, the Bella girls, they're cool. They're on TV. They're making major money. I mean, they're making a lot more money doing the Divas show than they are at WWE. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. I know what Melina was making when she was the champ at WWE.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But yeah, I was there for Tori, Keebler, and Ivory, the end of China, Lita, Trish. I mean, I was there for some god-awfully hot, bodacious, wonderful women. And then they went into the Diva search.
Hello?
And then they went into Tough Enough. So we got women. At one time, it was so brutal to walk backstage at WWE in the middle 2000s because the sexual energy was so incredible. Not only did we have hot chicks from WWE offices working backstage, but we had the Tough Enough girls and the girls who were trying out. Then they had the Diva search, and then we had our girls. It made it awfully difficult to work at WWE in those years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, your question is, what do I think? I think they're fine. I don't know Paige. I don't know AJ. I don't know, those other, the twins. I'm happy they're making money. They're in a tough business. Anybody who gets to the top of that business, and anybody who's thriving, and anybody who's making money, God bless them, because they've achieved something that's next to impossible. It's probably easier to hit the lottery or get struck by lightning than it is to become an over WWE diva.
Sure. Now, Jimmy, who are some of your favorite in the business right now, and who are some people you look at and just wonder, why are they even there?
I've never understood the whole Daniel Bryan thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've never understood that. That being said, I think he's a nice kid, but I never got. You got to realize that when I was there, Bryan and Austin Aries and Colt Cabana and the other guy who came over at the same time but didn't make it at WWE came over with Bryan Danielson. Nigel McGillicuddy or something?
Yep.
Nigel McGuinness. These guys were all guys who WWE locked in the laundry closets to do dark matches when we were in their towns. Mm-hmm. They got no respect. The guys, bullied them even more. And they were doing dark matches and squash matches. And now it's 10 years later, and they're all the top guys at WWE. To me, it's shocking. So look at it this way. I talked about the guys who let's look at 2002. Okay, Rock, Stone Cold, Rocky, Angle, Edge, Dave, Cena, all these guys. Where would Daniel Bryan wouldn't have been even able? Eddie and Ray and Benoit, they wouldn't have been able to get a dark match. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if it was back then, Daniel Bryan wouldn't have been able to get a dark match in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, and then it really rises to the top. It kind of tells you a little about the business. I know I'm crapping on him a little bit, but he's a very average size, a very, very average charisma, and they talk about great technical wrestlers. I was there when Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, and Chris Benoit were there, man, and Brock and everybody else. Does it get any more technical than that?
Yeah.
He's a great technical wrestler. I don't know. I just don't get it sometimes. I just don't get it. Punk, on the other hand, is a different beast. Punk would have made it in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and 2010s. Punk was an anomaly. Punk came along, and Punk's just got something that people like. Punk was going to make it anyway. As far as everybody else,
Reigns has a good look. I don't watch. I mostly catch snippets on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Reigns has got a good look. What happened to Ryback? Didn't there used to be a wrestler at WWE called Ryback?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, God almighty, they have so much into him. And I don't know, is he getting hurt? I don't really even know what the hell is going on with Ryback. But, I mean, great muscular presence. Sheffield, I think. Is that his name? He came up with the Tough Enough. He came up with Pewter.
Yep.
And Tough Enough. That's a long time ago to make, to still be in this business and to still be, have his physical prowess. Some of these other guys, I don't know who Seth Rollins is. He looks good. Ambrose, I kind of like. He's got that weird look. None of these guys are huge, and I'm used to the more bigger, more muscular wrestlers. You think of Big Show and you think of Triple H and Mark Henry and Dave and guys like that. Even Cena. I mean, Cena next to Cena. Cena's one big block of muscle, and now these guys, there's very few of them. Roman is a big guy, and the other guys are muscular, but they're not those size guys that Vince loves. It's not those typical size guys. But God bless them. I don't follow it, to tell you the truth. I mean, I'm interested now that Mania is coming up. I don't get that. I don't get that Sting is in one of the main events. I mean, I don't. I never really got the whole Sting thing. I'm not saying he's not a giant in the business. He's just not a giant in the WWF, WWE business.
Yes.
He's a WCW guy, and before that he was with the Ultimate Warrior in the territories. So I never really got that. But listen, if the end result is that Paul Levesque has a great match with him, then I'm all for it, because I've always liked Paul. And Paul was very good to me, and I think he's one of the greatest of all time.
Okay, now you kind of mentioned a gentleman, CM Punk. We talked about him a little bit earlier. What do you think his chances are getting into MMA? I know that you are you watch MMA and you know quite a bit about it. So, how do you think he's going to fare?
Well, he's a naturally tough kid. He's got a lot of things favoring him. Mm-hmm. He's a tough kid. Anybody who gets in a WWE ring is a tough guy. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I could tell you all kinds of stories about why that's 100% true. He's been through it. He's been through the training. He's been not through MMA, but he's been through WWE. He's been through the training process. He's achieved a certain amount. Mm-hmm. He's got a bit of, I believe, I don't know him that well. I was there when he was there, but I don't know him that well. I believe he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, which is always a good thing. I think he wants to prove a lot of people wrong, and I think he's extremely determined. That being said, I think he's in his late 30s now.
Uh-huh.
I think he might be 38. I think it's a little, late to get in the business. Do I think he would be a good fighter? Yeah. Do I think he'll be a great fighter? I can't see it, but it wouldn't surprise me. And it's almost weird that I'm putting him over, because I've never been a big fan. But after careful consideration and after listening to his interview with Colt, I like the guy more. I never really disliked him. It's just that some guys you gel with and some guys you don't. Cena, I never gelled with. I was there for years. I watched him come up. I was there long before him. He was never particularly respectful to me, whereas other guys were. And maybe CM Punk I was only with maybe for a year, and he was the low man on the totem pole. But for the most part, I think he's a tough kid. So God bless him. Anybody who gets in a cage has the biggest balls on the planet Earth. You get in a cage, you're a tough guy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, we take our jobs here pretty seriously. We did our homework and found out that you are not the only famous Noonan out there. Your sister, Peggy, which you mentioned earlier, is also pretty famous. What can you tell us about your sister?
Well, in right-wing politics, most people wouldn't even know who Peggy Noonan is. But in right-wing politics, especially the Reagan years and the Bush years, and in terms of people who watch politics on TV and how it plays out, my sister is huge. When people find out that Peggy Noonan is my sister, they don't want to talk about WWE anymore, and they don't want to talk about Super Troopers anymore, and they definitely don't want to talk about the Martha's Vineyard affair. All they want to do is put over my sister. Peggy will go down as at least the greatest female speechwriter in history, and probably one of the top 10 speechwriters in history. And we are talking about speechwriters by the name of Abraham Lincoln and Ted Sorensen, who wrote the not Teddy Roosevelt, the John F. K. speech. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Peggy Noonan wrote the famous Boys of Point du Hoc speech, the 40th invasion of Normandy speech for Ronald Reagan. She wrote the Challenger speech for Reagan and quoted the words, brought the words to the forefront. They left the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. And she also wrote the inauguration address for Bush the Senior, 1,000 points of light, a kinder, gentler nation, read my lips. My sister Peggy is responsible for those words. So you could see that she's big. And in right-wing politics, it doesn't get any bigger. She is my sister. She's a wonderful lady. We've had a rough relationship over the years because we're a big Irish family. I have 6 sisters, and she is one of them. But it doesn't matter. She's a wonderful and talented woman, and we actually sold my first movie. I came back from Los Angeles in 1990, and I told Peggy a story. Over the next week, we wrote the movie, and we sold it to Warner Brothers 1 week later. It was called either a Jersey Story or a Jersey Christmas. I think we changed it to a Jersey Christmas, and it's been sitting on a shelf for 25 years. Which is what happens to movies sometimes. But she's an amazingly talented woman, and thank you for asking about her. And most people wouldn't put us together. As a matter of fact, one day in the New York Post, there was a story about me and her, and they called me Peggy Noonan's little brother. And of course, I'm 6'2", 265, and Peggy's about 5'6.5". So it was kind of funny that everybody calls me Peggy Noonan's little brother.
All right, so Jimmy, what does the future hold for Jimmy Noonan?
Dude, kick ass, take names. 2015 started off with a blast. Life, I've exceeded all expectations. I should have been dead 30 years ago. May 6th, 1987. This May will be my 28th year of continuous spiritual sobriety. So I should have been dead 30 years ago. So that the fact that I've made it to 57 and have excelled at everything I've done, I've been and am an actor. I am a proud member, 25 years of the Screen Actors Guild. I'm a decent father to Jim and Cecily, my almost 34-year-old son, and my 10-year-old daughter in Detroit. By the way, my 10-year-old daughter is the best thing that happened to me at WWE. Most things that happen to me turn in retrospect, kind of suck. But I got a 10-year-old daughter out of the deal. On the road, I met somebody, and we had a baby together. I have excelled at the security business. I've excelled at sobriety and helping other people get sober. I'm becoming quite the writer. And I hate to put myself over. It's just a fact. If I don't put myself over, who's going to put me over, right?
We will. We will.
I think 2015 and beyond, as successful, and I think by all definitions of the word successful, I have been successful in life, but I think my true success lies in my future. And that's the exciting part. That's the reason, I get out of bed every day. And the first thing I do every day when I get out of bed is I thank my God for another beautiful night and another beautiful morning. And I just ask him, to put me in the right direction.
and just to be kind to somebody, just to be kind to one other human being today. I don't have to be kind to everybody, although I try, but just to be extra kind to one extra human every day. And life is very, very exciting for this old, fat 57-year-old man. I'm really, really, really excited.
Lightning round.
Which is harder, security or acting?
Acting by far. Acting by far.
All right. Vince McMahon.
You know what? The first thing that I felt in my chest, believe it or not, and I have no idea why, was like father, and I have no idea why. But okay. I think that's being honest, like just like a father, almost like a father.
Sure.
Okay. Best part about working for WWE?
The perks. The perks as it pertains to seeing the world in first class, literally, the traveling perks. That was the best thing about WWE.
All right. Who's your favorite actor?
I would have to say either the top three are Nicholson, Pacino, and Dustin Hoffman.
All right.
Okay. I know you talk about it a lot, and people are probably wanting to know like something ridiculous that happened or whatever, but do you have a funniest security story?
Funniest security story? Well, it's been done before, but I think when the Undertaker in Bangor, Maine, or Lewiston, Mass, some weird place up there, I think when he hit the ring one night, and it wasn't the Undertaker, it was a kid, maybe about 20 years old. He was very tall and very skinny, and I'm talking about with the hat and the overcoat and the urn, and he hits the ring one night, and I clobbered him. Oh my God! I took him off the ring post from the floor. I fucked this kid up. And it turns out he plays like the Undertaker in his local school play, and he's like autistic or something like that.
Oh no!
And it's not particularly funny, but it really is, because you just never know. When somebody means, I take my job very seriously, and when I was at WWE, there were never, ever any problems. When Jimmy Tillis and I ran a show, and there was just me at one show, me at Raw, and Tillis at SmackDown, or vice versa, there were never any problems. We were good, and we took our jobs. I would have walked to the end of the earth on broken glass for that company. I would have done anything for that company. And we made the tightest, best shows, but nobody ever hit the ring. But you didn't, they didn't necessarily mean bad will when they did hit the ring. And I clobbered this poor kid one night, and it turns out he was like, developmentally challenged or something. I actually felt bad because I clobbered this kid.
All right, well, what's the worst part about working security?
There's a saying in security that shit runs downhill and it stops at security.
Okay.
Shit runs downhill and it stops at security. That's the answer right there.
Okay. Now, over the years, you've seen WWE kind of go from when you were there, it was more gritty, real, raw. What are your thoughts on WWE in this era, PG era?
WWE, I think you can find more. It doesn't necessarily have to be as over the top as the late 90s, the Attitude Era, but it also doesn't have to be today. I think it can be more the early 2000s, when guys were still gigging, and there was still, the suck it chants, and there was it was somewhere in the middle of the Attitude Era and where it is now. I think that's what works best, and I think that's what's best for business, because the guys are going to still take their kids to the show. They may not take their daughters, but they'll definitely take their little sons to the show, and they're going to take all their friends to the show to see John Cena and to buy hundreds of thousands and millions and trillions of dollars of John Cena's merchandise. They're still going to do it
without this PG stuff. That's where I'm with Dave Bautista on that. That I disagree with the PG. I think the early 2000s was just fine when there was still blood, and it was sometimes real, when you were Ken Kennedy and you were getting opened up the hard way, or you were, Eddie and, gigging too deep and hitting an artery. I mean, that's some exciting stuff. Blood can be extremely effective sometimes, and I think that only enhances a story.
Jimmy, I think we barely scratched the surface with you tonight, but I mean, we loved having you on. Where can fans keep up with you these days if they want to follow you?
I think I'm just I'm doing more Twitter these days. I mean, I've always been on Facebook, but I'm doing more Twitter. Mm-hmm. So it's just Jimmy, JIMMYNOONAN at Twitter. There's going to be some things to come, and and I will let you know. I will tell you guys that I do a lot less of this stuff these days. I get offered all the time to do podcasts, but I do remember this slim redhead at ringside for a lot of years, and I remember you as being a good kid, Jonathan, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I just remember you being a good kid, and when you contacted me, I kind of knew your name. Again, I don't do this much. I'm pretty much done with WWE. And after I said a couple of things tonight, I'm going to be totally done with WWE. Just in case anybody picks this up. And then, read some of the things, what I said about bullies and a couple other things, and calling Rich Herring, the guy in the office, an asshole, which he's a total asshole, because he's like Vince's main guy up there. But I don't care. I don't know if I'm going to be alive 5 more years or 30 more years. And guess what? My time was due to finally say something, but I would only do it in the right milieu. And I kind of chose you guys. I mean, we chose each other, but I say no to a lot of people these days. But I just felt like saying okay to you guys. So in some senses, this is my au revoir to the wrestling business. I just don't care anymore. I don't care. I look back at it as not a fun time in my life. It was miserable, and I made a huge mistake going on the road with WWE. So God bless them. I wish them all well, and they can all kiss my ass.
Well, we thank you so much. Like you said, you've got a lot of things coming up, so everybody go out there and just support this gentleman. He is a class act. Always a nice guy to me, and we just want to thank you for coming on tonight.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourself.